This is Uncle Stu, the old man on the block. And today we got, at least in our area, the one that we call our top cop. And our brother that can bring knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to issues dealing with African American community and the police department. We're bringing on the one, the only, Nathan Daley.
Yo, what's up, Uncle Stu?
What's going on, sir? What's going on?
Man, all is well, man. Blessed. And thank you for having me. Again, it's been a minute since I've been over here, so I'm excited to be back.
Yes, it's been almost a year. We've done interviews, we've done panels, had you pop on to live streams just to drop knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, etc. So yeah, so it has been awesome. It's been an awesome ride for me, being on YouTube, hearing conversations, taking deep dives in conversations. Then I took off for a little while, and it wasn't because of YouTube. I took off because I wanted to really deep dive into conversations that was going online and having those same conversations offline, trying to see if the issues I'm seeing online, is it really happening offline, and how offline people are dealing with it versus online people are dealing with it. And it gives me that open-mindedness to know what to talk about, how to talk about it, and whether or not I'm dealing with reality, you know what I'm saying, a fantasy, or a combination of both.
Right.
You know, so I invited you on here because I want to have, more of an updated conversation in that area. So I'm taking the backseat as the Mr. Know-It-All and just becoming the student, as opposed to the teacher. In this space, we have been dealing with male issues, men having relationship issues, and that seems to be the 80% bulk of the conversation that I'm hearing echo. As an older guy, it's easy for me to say, man, get over that woman, get over this person. But I'm not a get over person because I know it's a process. I know that for me, if it wasn't for certain things that was already in place in my life, I could have been down a deeper rabbit hole than where I am. I recognize that, although I lost my dad last year, I recognize I had a father in my life. I know what a married couple look like. I had some professional therapy that I had to go to, where a lot of these people don't have that, whether they're not seeking it or whether they just don't have access to it, whatever the situation is. I'm not going to sit here and just blame, shame, and all that other stuff. But I recognize that I had tools in my life, and that's what I'm trying to provide on my platform. What are the tools to get through? What have you observed both in your professional life, your YouTube life, and just having conversation from your observation? Where are we and when I say community, I'm going to right now just focus on Black community. Okay. Where are we as a Black community today? Where are men at? And when I use men, let's deal with the age group of the millennial generation. Where are the millennial generation? What do you think is needed in that millennial generation? What do you think is missing in that generation? And I'll add a caveat. As I stated earlier, I know I had certain resources in my background,
right,
where I understand other men did not have those resources. So how do, let's say, someone like myself help men that don't have those resources?
That's a great question, or questions. Someone might think the question's loaded. It's not necessarily that it's loaded, because I've actually really contemplated this a lot. The truth of the matter is, when you really look at things from, you can look at things from a macro level or micro level.
Okay.
And what's missing on both sides is that there is no structure, and you can't have structure if you don't have a plan or any type of strategy. So some have the strategy, but they lack in the tactics, right? And so you can have a good strategy, but if your tactics are bad, then it means nothing. And so I think what's happening within our community, especially with the men, is that those who are there to teach are supposed to teach tactics and strategies on how to navigate life are not present. And if you don't have that person that's present, then you're forced to have to come up with these things on your own, which is one problem. The other problem is people who do have someone there, fathers and mentors, they're present and they are teaching and giving wisdom, yet the youth or the generation that they're teaching are not listening. So that's the second issue. And I think you could attest to this, I can attest to this,
right?
That you could have both parents who will give you the world, give you everything you need. But if you don't adhere to any of the lessons, if you don't learn or choose to make the choices necessary for you to be successful, then guess what? You're going to fail. And so what we see within our men a lot of times is we have men that either they're absent of a mentor, a male mentor, they're absent of a father, an active father, or they have a father, but the father's no good. So then therefore he's not really even teaching anything of value to the son anyways. And so as a man, then you grow up having to learn on your own, or you're being taught by your mother. And so this is, we're operating out of order. And, you know, we've gotten away from a lot of traditional values, a lot of conservative values, and not saying they're right or wrong, but what it is when you have structure, whether you agree with the structure or not, the structure is there for a purpose.
Right.
It provides a sense of, it provides a guide, a pathway, something for you to follow. It gives you things and tools so that you can prevent making the mistakes that the person before you who did their journey already made. You know, I see this with people in my own family. You know, I have nephews who sometimes they go against the beaten path. You know, the beaten path is there for a reason. You know that everybody traveled down this path. It kept them safe. Why? Because the person before them already acknowledged where all the danger was. And they'll tell you and say, hey, listen, this path right here might be comfortable, it might be safe, but I'm telling you now, this is the best way to go to avoid all the other things that you don't know. I'm telling you, this is where you need to go. I'm telling you, this is the lane you need to stay in. What ends up happening is, unfortunately, some people feel like that's a form of a prison. They feel like you're trying to keep them from, growing or experiencing life for themselves, not realizing that you're not necessarily doing that. You're simply keeping them grounded, keeping them focused on what's important and what their purpose is. Too often we have too many of our young men who are veering off that path because they are seeing something that tempts them, something that interests them, something that they see that society has told them is more important than following their purpose. And they get caught up, they get set back, they end up repeating the same mistakes that the person 2 generations before them made. Essentially, you have a lot of men trying to reinvent a wheel that was already created for them, all out of pride, out of ignorance, out of selfishness. And so when we say, where are we? We're in a state of confusion. We're in a state of no plan, no strategy, lack of knowledge, and lack of purpose. And when you are in a confused state like that, you're easily controlled, manipulated, and you're easily dismantled. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a dysfunctional community because the men are not in the great position that they need to be in order to actually make the impact that they should make.
I like the fact that you said earlier, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And what I hear echoed a lot, and it's funny because when I got introduced to a much larger audience, the topic was the older generation failed the younger generation. So it's one of those things where the echo, if you want to call it the echo chamber or conversation, and I've heard this also offline, and this wasn't even a black person that said it. You know, this was a white person that said it. They talked about the generation before failed them. They really went all the way to baby boomers, failed them. So if there was success in one generation, success in another, and then it comes down to the other 2 generations, How does those other two that feels the last two failed them now listen to them? And I'll give you an example. If you got a generation of younger men saying baby boomers failed us, then that means Generation X failed. So why should they hear baby boomers and Generation X if they have it in their mind they failed, as if they don't have nothing to offer, so they got to figure it out? Is that a misnomer? Is that propaganda? What is that? Because that's something that until I came online, I've never heard until I got into an online conversation. I just never grew up with blaming prior generation.
You know, the truth is that each previous generation can only do what they can do with what they had uh, allowed to them. We know the history of Black Americans, so we have to always take that in consideration when we having these conversations. But the truth is that there are some people within these different generations who successfully were able to pass their baton through their family without any major issues. I think this is also, we consider just the human condition. This is a part of life. Everybody's not going to be a winner, right? The problem within our community that's causing disruption is the culture that we've adopted, the culture that we've allowed to be manipulated and influenced through media, through entertainment, through sports, through all these other different avenues, marketing, capitalism. We've allowed our culture to be heavily influenced and rooted around these things. And so what it's causing a lot of disruption, and the disruption is causing dysfunction. The dysfunction is having a negative impact on generations to come. And so what do you do? What can you do? I think one of the challenges, the biggest challenges, is that we are in a state of lack of accountability. We don't want to accept the fact that a lot of the harm that's being committed is self-inflicted. We want to blame a lot of the issues on third parties, right?
Right.
Systems, not understanding that these systems are in place to make money.
Right.
It feels like oppression. I think we don't acknowledge the power that we actually have as a group.
Okay.
We allow ourselves to be taken advantage of, and we don't work collectively as a group. Some people argue against that. Some people prefer, we had this conversation on your channel before,
Right.
where some people are like, hey, we're not save yourself. You can't save the entire Black community. Well, unfortunately, when you operate with a selfish mindset, which I understand how difficult it is to think outside of yourself, to think outside of your own immediate family. But if we move with the mindset of we'll only care about my immediate group, then we lose a sense of collective power. And what we're saying is we are all our individual tribes, and we're not a collective unit operating. Because see, essentially is everybody else knows how to become a collective force when it's
Right.
necessary, right? They know when to work together when it's necessary. And we as a group here in this country, we have not mastered that part yet. When we come together collectively is actually where our power is most strongest. And so the mindset now of every average everyday Black person, Black American, is that we move as individuals. We can't get on the same page. We can't agree on the same things. We can't agree to even disagree, right?
Right.
Because if
Right.
you even have a difference of opinion, you're shunned, you're cut out, you're told you're not Black, you're told you're
Right.
called a sellout. So we don't even respect unique thought or difference of thought. We move with the hive mindset and believe that everybody's supposed to follow suit, or you're not good enough to be considered Black. So you have a lot of toxic teachings and toxic culture that's really been pervasive for a
Right.
very long time. So you got to figure out how to actually do away with that. We talk about this generational problem. The issue is this country is a capitalist country.
Right.
Black people make this country a lot of money, a lot of
Right.
money. And so it doesn't benefit anybody for us to become any wiser, for us to become more disciplined with our money, to become more disciplined with our actions. It actually it would cost, right? One
Right.
one one could even argue that if Black people ever were to wake up, essentially,
Right.
economically, financially, spiritually, just in a place where we accept and understand our true self-worth and our value, one would say that would really cause a economic collapse in this country and a global collapse, because that money is going to end up retracting and then coming right back into our community, because we'll understand that we are actually slaving ourselves again. Essentially, one could argue this is slavery 2.0. It's a slavery, or I would say it's more of an indentured servant. And,
Mm.
and this type of servitude is desired, right? It's
Right.
desired. And, the people who put us in this trick bag was, very creative, and it's working. It's working. And the only way out of it is to actually let go of the things that you actually desire the most. So in order to gain everything, you essentially have to lose everything. And I think the mind won't allow people to do it. But that is the real freedom. To gain everything, you have to lose everything. And that's one thing in our community that we're not willing to do, which is make the necessary sacrifice. We simply let those things go, and we'll see an overabundance of just life, money, value, success. But we're too dependent on other people to give those things to us. And that's essentially all it is at the end of the day.
I want to go back because you mentioned a previous conversation. You broke it down in this conversation. Let's go back to the individual, to the collective, to the community. I'll tell you mentally how I grew up. It was always, because I came from a more conservative, traditional background. And I did come up originally both with that background, my parents being both from the South. They're the migrants that came from the South, went to the North, kind of that pick yourself up by the bootstrap. Their community aspect was family. You have family. You make sure your family is squared away. And it wasn't always what was being defined as the nucleus, mother, father, brother, sister. It was, that extended family. Then it was within that, it trickled down to community, because if I'm doing right by my family, someone else is doing right by their family, as a community, everything goes out right.
Correct.
But then you got that area, and it's always been a gray area. Personally for me, the gray area has been, I've done this work. I'm trying to show you how I did the work. But like you said, I got rejected several times because of where I came from, how I grew up. I saw the success, but it's like, you're not Black enough. You ain't hood enough. You ain't, early 90s, you ain't did no prison time.
Right.
Because I had a dude when we was online, he was like, well, I spent X amount of years in prison. And I'm like, what they got to do with the topic? So it's like, we're using prison as now the badge of manhood. Like, if you didn't go to prison, you're not a man. Right. If you ain't got bodies, you ain't a man. And I'm just speaking on the male side. If you believe in capitalism, let's say capitalism over socialism, then you're not a man. You ain't Black. If you believe in education, whether it's institutional or self-education, you're still not Black.
Right. If you vote for Trump, you're not Black, right?
Exactly. I grew up in what I call I call it the original Pan-African movement.
Okay.
When we thought of Pan-Africanism, we thought of Black people all over the world. So if Jamaicans was doing right, Trinidadians, Haitians, Black Brazilians, since that's a hot topic, Black Brazilians, I had more contact with West Africans living in New York, but I was one of the original when Nelson Mandela was still in prison and Winnie Mandela was running everything. We had a global mindset.
Right.
Today, that global mindset is gone. If you're going to deal with anything, you got to be born with no daddy. All your life got to be pitiful. It's the white man's fault for every issue in your life. Only Black Americans got this one experience. all the other black people around the world don't have our experience. And it's like, wait a minute now. When I studied Pan-Africanism, everybody had their own experience, but everybody had it different, but everybody still had it. I said, we didn't go through what Jamaica went through.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, we had a war, but they were doing some stuff in Jamaica. They was doing some stuff in Haiti. You know, there was some issues in Nigeria. Like, there was some issues that everybody had to face to get through, but we don't have that conversation anymore. So it's like everything is kind of lost and confused. So for someone like me, how do I open up and try to understand everything you said when even the definitions of conservatism has changed? I like the way someone said it. You got a bunch of people saying they're conservative, but then they want liberal outcomes. I felt that was coined so correctly, because even what conservatism is being presented is not the conservatism I grew up with, if that makes sense.
Right. I would say to that, speaking on what you talked about earlier, you know, where is the breakdown at? Honestly, you can really sum it up with one word, and it would be pride. You know, there's no pride. And you think about how powerful pride is when you have a group of people who share the same type of pride. It's powerful, you know. So that's why the first thing they, you know, when they brought Africans over to this country, they wanted to break their pride, because they know how contagious that is. When you can break the pride, and how do you break the pride? You break the men, right? It's the men. The men carry the pride. And when that is broken, you have chaos, right? And you're able to then manipulate whatever you need to manipulate, however you want to condition a person the way you want them to, because they have no pride. And what we see today is a lot of men and women without any pride, right? They're prideless. We have a prideless community. You know, when you don't have pride, you're not susceptible to shame. You're not susceptible to guilt. There's no guilt. You don't feel guilty for harming your own people. You don't feel guilty for taking advantage of your own people. You don't feel guilty for disrespecting your own people. You don't feel guilty. You don't feel shame for mistreating them, whether through business, right? Through relationship, right? So this lack of pride is what's in our culture that's causing all the issues. That is the issue there. And here's the thing that really comes to mind to me. Let me tell you a quick story.
Okay.
About, we all know the Titanic, and when it sunk, there was a Japanese man on the Titanic. He was the only one. Very interesting story about this gentleman, and to really showcase what I mean by pride and culture and the power of culture. Japanese man, he's the only Japanese man on the boat, citizen of he's a nationalist of Japan. Mm-hmm. The boat sinks, right? It's sinking, and there's a raft, right? There's a raft that people are getting on. Well, he starts to wait. The story is he's waiting. He's seeing people get on. He just sees the man getting on the boat. He felt conflicted, right? Because he's like, I don't want to get on the boat, and there's maybe a woman or a child that needs to get on first. Right. He's conflicted with the idea of saving himself versus staying on the boat. Why? Because his culture, right? His culture. There is a big component of shame and guilt that really surrounds a lot of Japanese people when it comes to doing things that goes against your pride, the pride of the people. Mm-hmm. He decided to get on the boat. He's like, well, shoot, nobody else is jumping on. Let me jump on. Jumped on the raft. He swam. He got to safety. He survived. When he made it back to his country, he made it back to Japan, they shunned him, right? They disrespected him. They said, why is it that you survived and everybody else died? As a man with pride, you should have died with the boat. You should have died with everyone else. That's honorable. And so by you leaving and escaping, that was cowardly. And so we can talk about whether or not that mentality is healthy or not. Mm-hmm. The reality is you're talking about a culture, an understanding of how people view one another, and it's all accepted. Everybody is in agreement, right? The vast majority of the people agree that this is the type of way you're supposed to carry yourself. This is how you exude pride. This is how you make your family look good as well. You know, you're not dishonoring yourself, because if you dishonor yourself, you dishonor your family. If you dishonor your family, you dishonor your community. You dishonor your community, you're dishonoring the nation of people that you represent. Life is bigger than you. And the Japanese understand that. Life is bigger than you. And I think that is where the pride comes in. You have pride. You want to treat each other with respect. You want to treat each other with the sense of, I'm treating me the same way because, or I'm treating someone that I care about, someone I love, the same way I would treat you. That is pride. That is what's missing. And when you have that, I'm telling you, you would see our community turn upside down or right side up.
Right.
You know,
right.
Complete shift change. And that story always stuck with me because it speaks volumes. You know, sir, you should have died an honorable death. You know, what you did was shameful. And everybody's in agreement with that. You know, what would it look like in our community if people were so fearful, so frightened to be rude, to be disrespectful, to rob, to cheat, to steal, to kill from one another? It was looked at as being the most despicable thing you could ever do in your life. You would ruin your name. Right now, today, no one cares about their name. When I was being raised, my father told me, your name is all you have.
Right.
Your name is all you have. And when you die in life, you die twice, right? The first time you die physically. The second time you die is when the last person who knows you dies, right? The last person who knew your name also dies, and you die twice. You know, you want to live a life where people will always speak your name in a positive way, and it lives on. And so I think that is something that we really lost within our community. There's no pride. There's a lot of self-hatred, and there's no love from a collective standpoint. You know, a lot of times when we talk about the things that we fear in our community, a lot of the fear, a lot of the problems are coming from within and not coming from on the outside. And so that is one of the biggest issues that we face with today.
Let's take that. I'm gonna give you one of the arguments I would hear. Doesn't mean I agree with the argument, but I'm gonna give it to you. I ain't dying for these women. I ain't trying to protect these women. You know, forget these women, F these women, you know, and, you know, I got to give a valid statement. If I can't instruct you, if I can't tell you from a man to a woman, hey, don't wear those type of clothes because there's danger wearing that. Don't be out here doing this. Not every man wants a woman that's shaking her thing. There's a value that you have. And because you are valued, I don't want you to be doing 304 duties. You know, I don't want you to, you know, do certain things because the end result is not going to be positive. But then that woman will say, you can't really tell me anything. You know, I got access to, in my 20s, I can go on my phone. I got access to all these men, regardless of their economic status. So I'm good. Now you're reaching 30, 40 years old, and that status is gone. But I want to go to the heart of the matter. You got men on one side that's saying, I ain't protecting these chicks. You know, even in my age group, I'm going, I can't, it's hard to argue that.
Yeah.
But then you got the black women that's yelling and saying, we're the least protected. And it's like, okay, there is either a language gap or there's something that's missing. So that's why I say I'm gonna take the ignorant route and say, okay, let me get somebody else who got eyes on this situation to kind of unpack that.
Yeah, I can touch on that because obviously I definitely experienced that dating. I've dated black women all my life. So, you know, I've seen it.
Need to hit the bell so that they you know, you need to say that one more time.
I dated black women all my life. I don't get it twisted. Someone, I don't want them to do me like TLA talking about to be dating white women.
Yeah, boy, TLA
I
get
mean,
it hard, don't it?
man, they tried it. Well, it's really only like a couple of them, Tasha K and them, but
Yeah, yeah,
gotta
yeah.
credit that brother. But people hear me speak and they hear me talk, and I've had a gentleman come on my channel and say, "Oh, I bet you're dating a white woman." I'm like, "Why do you think that?" And because you disagree with me, you think, and this goes back to what we said earlier, where people try to
Right.
judge you, put you in a box simply because you have a different perspective.
Right.
Oh, you must like white people. I was like, I like everybody, and it's
Right.
not that I purposely prevented myself from dating white women or other women. I just didn't come across them, or didn't come across one that I was attracted to or whatever. I've seen plenty of beautiful women on all sides of the rainbow. So listen,
Right.
I'm an equal opportunist. You know what I mean? So I don't want nobody getting it twisted. I love women, period. You know.
Right.
So it just so happened that the majority of women that I come in contact with, and living in a predominantly black area and things like that, you're just around what you're around. To your point, one of the things I always say, regardless, and people don't like when I say it, but when it comes to women, and just people in general, because these things apply to everybody. You can't protect people who don't listen. If you don't listen, how can I protect you? And so the question is, though, when it comes to women specifically, yeah, there are things, that they don't want to always feel like they have to fall into this idea that a man knows what's best for them, right? They move with a renewed sense of worth, self-value, and sometimes they might feel like, if I'm getting advice or taking this advice from a man, from this telling me how I should really conduct my life or move around or what to wear and things like that, that you're in a sense basically saying that, it comes off as like a form of control. It's how they interpret it. They
Right.
interpret it as a form of control. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of confusion. And I say interpret because what ends up happening is you have some women who are giving and relinquishing power to men that are not their husbands, right? And so we start seeing this confusion where you have men who are just boyfriends, men who are just guys they're sleeping with, trying to give these women advice or tell them what to do or things of that nature. And they're operating out of order, right? They're operating out of order. And that's where a lot of this confusion is coming from. Why is this confusion happening? Is because it goes back to what we said in the beginning, is that who is teaching, right? Who is teaching? We talk about being submissive and things like that. Well, that is a trait or a quality that's reserved for a woman's husband, and so,
Yes.
but what ends up happening is people are trying to apply it to this dude you just met yesterday,
Right.
and you're giving him your body, you're giving him access to your temple, and for nothing at all, right? And so, there's just so much confusion. Why? Because of the culture. So there's people are not following any guidelines. They're not following any structure. They're not following any rules. They're doing what they want to do, right? This, in my generation, we came up with the Netflix and chill concept, right?
Right.
That's part of the culture now. Whereas I meet you today, we're out having a good time. I meet you today, I invite you back to my place, and there's a 95% chance that I'm going to sleep with you.
Right.
And there's no commitment, there's no nothing. There's a high probability that we're not going to use protection. So that's going to increase the probability of one or two things. One, STD will be transferred, or two, a child will be conceived out of that process. And and these are girls from 15, 16 to up to 30, right? 35, almost 40, who are participating in this new cultural concept of dating, mating, and relationship. And so it's dysfunctional and it's causing a lot of issues. And so it's fun. We could say and argue it's fun, but the effects, right? The blowback from it is extremely detrimental to the community. But we've adopted this thing within our culture, and now it's acceptable. It's acceptable to be sexually undisciplined. And so in the moment, it sounds like a great idea. Long term, it has its consequences. And so again, it goes back to, okay, how do you protect that? Well, you tell them that's, hey, this is not a good idea. Oh, okay, well, don't tell me what to do. You know, I'm grown, I'm this, I'm that. I'm free to
Mhm.
do what I want to do. Well, I can't protect you when you don't what? When you don't listen. And then you come back and say, okay, well, who's teaching them? Well, you can't teach a student who doesn't want to learn. And that becomes another issue. And so when we talk about the lack of sexual discipline within our community, the hypersexuality between men and women, young boys and young girls, you see this thing being influenced and sent out through the media, through music. You know, you hear the lyrics in some of these music. You
Yeah.
know, we've taken that censorship out. You have kids that are listening to the Meg the Stallions, the Cardi B's, the Beyoncés, and then you have them listening to a lot of these male rappers, these Rick Rosses, these Drakes, and all these other Little Uzi, whoever, and they're
Right.
talking about what they're going to do to this young girl's throat when they get back to the house, right? You listen to like 21 Savage. I remember playing his clip one time on my stream, and for a whole 3 minutes, he talks about one, stopping at some woman's house, blowing her back out, going back on the car, spinning the block, dropping, shooting a couple people in the head, going back around, getting a girl in his car, getting receiving some oral sex from her, dropping her off at the corner because her boyfriend's on the way back home, looking through the gas station, shooting some more black men, going back looking for some other thought he's going to blow her back out. For a whole 3 minutes, that's the lyrics, and the evil and the wicked lyrics are all gracefully placed on a very nice instrumental beat, and you're bobbing your head, you're reciting the lyrics, and
Right.
you're speaking death, destruction, and sexual deviance over your life as a child and as a young adult. And then we start to then step outside of our homes, and then we start to reenact what we've rehearsed in our minds and that we professed and spoke out loud and spoke over ourselves and spoke over another person in front of us. You know, Charleston White made this statement. He made a clip and he said, every gun that a black man carries, those bullets is for another black man. And so when you hear things like that, Charleston White spoke, he's absolutely true. You know, my
Right.
brother don't wake up in the morning tomorrow, I'm gonna go shoot me some white boys today. No,
Right.
those bullets are for another black man. And so, you know, these things, we are conditioning ourselves to destroy our own people, and we're doing it through music, we're doing it through entertainment, we're doing it through social media, and it's right in front of our face. And then when you go and say, hey, stop that, hey, this is destructive, then we want to say, no, I do what I want to do. And to your point, you can't teach someone who doesn't want to be taught, and that is one of the biggest issues that we have in our culture today. And that applies to the men, and it also applies with the women. And that's just what it is.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because I'm not going to mention this content creator's name, but I have to destroy him. When you don't really understand feminism versus black feminism as it's originally written, as the founders put it out there, and then you've added some garbage 10, 15 years later into that movement, and I'm gonna just call a spade a spade. When black women was talking about black feminism and patriarchy, it wasn't against black men. They really don't understand where that's coming from. They have added the alphabet community onto it, which means black women's values goes down, and they don't realize this is not black men doing it to them. You know, and that's going to be a challenging video, but I'm gonna get that video out there because they've added so much on to, you know, I studied politics. They've added so much on to it that they're doing their own self-destruction. They've adopted things that they should not have adopted.
Well, that's what happened when you allow people to co-opt your movement, and
Right.
it's a tactic. I think I call it a guerrilla warfare tactic.
Yeah.
Um, you know, here in Atlanta, I don't know if you heard, but we had a riot breakout
Right.
last night, and you know, I plan on covering on my stream, but you know, they're protesting about, you know, the police building a law enforcement facility. It's huge. It's
Right.
huge. Not gonna lie, it's huge, and it's like, I don't know, something ridiculous, like 80,000. I don't know, like acres maybe, something wild like that. It was a $90 million project, and I want to say About 30 million of that is coming from taxpayer dollars. So it's riot broke out. They're protesting and things like that, and some of them are doing it under this disguise of we're activists and Black Lives Matter group and this and
Yeah.
whatever. Then you look around, you don't see any Black people in the crowd.
Right.
And a lot of these movements have been co-opted, and it's just you don't even know what you're fighting for anymore because things just don't add up. And you find out that this is all a political ploy to just kind of move their own agenda that has nothing to do with what you thought you were doing in the first place. And that's how I look at these things with the feminist movement. And I'm not too knowledgeable with it, to be honest. I know there was different waves and things like that. But, I look at the bigger picture. Sometimes you have to just sit back and look at what the impact of it was.
Right.
Who was it affecting the most, and how it was strategically done. And I think when you start seeing that, you really start finding out the truth behind what was done and why it was done, and who actually benefited. And a lot of times, that's how I always saw when I'm investigating things. I look at the beneficiaries.
Right.
At the end of it all, when the smoke clears, who's benefiting? And when you find out who's benefiting, that's the source of the problem.
What
And
they
that's
say,
like,
follow the money.
follow the money, man. All
Follow the
follow
money.
the money. Yeah, who got paid? Who got
Right.
paid behind it? Who got the bad end of the stick? Okay, well, that's your target. And sometimes they do it in such a roundabout way that you can't readily see it. And the reason why a lot of the groups can't see themselves being manipulated is because they're manipulating their emotions. And this is why on my channel I talk about facts over feelings, because your
Right.
feelings will get you caught up. The facts are what the facts are, whether you like them or not. And a lot of times with people, they get so caught up emotionally, and that's the best way to manipulate someone. In martial arts, I tell people all the time, I used to teach martial arts,
Right.
that when you control the head, you control the body. Where the head goes, the body follows. And that's what people go after. They attack the mind, because after you do that, everything else is on autopilot. And so you see our community on autopilot. We're easily triggered, we're hypersensitive, we're very emotional. And if you tap into that, that's it. We're out of here.
Right.
And you can get us to burn buildings, you can get us to kill one another, you can get us to destroy communities, all from tapping into that emotion. And I always say you can blame the puppet, or you can blame the puppeteer. And a lot of us are so gone that you can't even see the strings that are attached to your back. And that is the biggest issue that I see when it comes to that.
Let's deal with, I hear my brothers, they talk about the struggle they're having with women. I get it. Is definitely more than what I've ever had to deal with growing up. I've never had to deal with until I got much, 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 much older, gross disrespect, that I see coming. The attitudes, the mannerisms. I mean, I see it. So it's not like that's something new. It's like what I'm seeing now is like over the top ridiculous. I tell my partner, I say, every time I do a live or I talk to somebody, I say, I think my wife get happy, because it's like, thank God I got you. You ain't them.
Hard, man. It's harder to find quality. It's just hard.
It really is.